Alright guys, today we got a 2004 Infiniti G35X sedan. Now this will apply for the 2003 to 2007 G35X sedans, and this will also apply to 350Zs, some of the G35 coupes, I think the 03 to 07 again. The job we're doing today is a couple of them actually, but the first thing I'm going to walk you guys through is camshaft sensor replacement. Now today we are replacing the driver side, which is the left hand side camshaft sensor. I'm not going to do a full tutorial on it, but there's one on each head, as you can imagine. They're on the back side. And basically what we have to do in this case is take the intake tube that normally sat right here. Now the intake tube has a bolt here and a bolt here, and those hold it to the plenum. Those are gonna be 10 millimeters. We got another 10 millimeter clamp here, and then you're gonna have I believe an 8 millimeter clamp there. This is essentially what it looks like when it's installed. Now, as you can see, I have the throttle body removed already too. But take those two bolts out, loosen this clamp, loosen the clamp up here at the throttle body. You gotta wiggle it, you gotta finesse. Don't get too crazy, you'll break it. So, throttle body, you use a 5 millimeter Allen head. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. You got a connector. It's got a squeeze tab on the connector. Sometimes you got to wiggle these a little bit. Don't get too aggressive. They will definitely break on older cars. But what we're going to be replacing is, if you can see the green plug there. You know, there's actually a hose right in the way, but you can see right in front of my light there's a bolt. That is a 10 millimeter securement bolt. That is for the left hand side camshaft position sensor. Now, one thing you'll see I did take off, you see this guy here, that is a hose that wraps up and comes to the intake tube. I have removed that hose. It is very easy to do. And then we're going to be taking that 10 millimeter bolt out, and then you throw the new sensor in, put it back together. Very, very, very easy. Now, if you're working on the other side, this side, you can kind of see it there, okay? That dirty green connector. It's easier because all you got to do is move this harness out of the way if you're on the passenger side. But again, back side of the engine, not a hard job to do, guys. You can do this at home. Now, that being said, you got cam codes, you got timing codes, you got anything like that. Most likely culprit, engine oil. These dipsticks are nearly impossible to read, and I'm not even going to pull it out because I'm done messing with it. The dipsticks they turn and bend and turn and bend, and they got a really long run into the oil pan. And what happens is you put oil in it, you put the dipstick in, you pull it out, the oil looks full because the dipstick scraped all the oil along the way down into the dipstick tube. You need to at least 3 to 4 times stick them in, pull them out, and wipe them 3 to 4 times before you get an accurate reading. And remember, if you can't see oil on both sides of the line where you think the oil is on the dipstick, that's not where the oil is. The oil is always going to be where it's on both sides. So I'm going to get started on replacing this. We'll touch back later. Now, because this is going to be really handy for a lot of you, when you try to release this clip, the clip needs to go forward. It is kind of like a push lock. So when you push this clip forward, which it's hard to push forward, you got to push it forward and pull the crank sensor out at the same time. You got to push this little green thing forward. When you clip in the new camshaft sensor, it will actually depress backwards and lock by itself. Kind of neat, but definitely a pain. Alright, the new sensor is in. So I figure if I can find a good spot for this, might be able to show you guys how it goes back together. Yep, I'll leave it just like that. Now, you got to be careful not to strip out these Allens, because that'll be the worst thing you do, is round out an Allen and then not be able to get it in or out. So there was one that was already stripped out from the previous time somebody had took it out. That one I'm putting in the most easily accessible spot. Now, this tube, like I was talking about before, which I'm going to have to put a vice grip on and then slide right on. You don't have to use a vice grip, but it definitely helps. I'll show you right there. And it's this hose. Sits right back here and then comes up over by the intake, but it's more angled like that. Just like so. We're going to twist it back a little bit. Now don't let this plug get buried. That is for the throttle body, as you would call it. Just getting the throttle body prepped. You got to make sure you don't lose the gasket. It needs a gasket. Kind of make the gasket dummy proof. It only fits one way. Now you're going to take the whole thing, bolts and all. You're going to line it up. And then you're going to grab your Allen. Now we're going to put the throttle body back on. Unless you do this a lot or for a living, I don't recommend using power tools to put stuff on unless you know what you're doing. Again, you always cross torque. So I'm going to start on the top here and I'm going to tighten it down. Now I know how much torque to put on these. I've worked on a fair share of VQ engines. You should look up the torque spec if you're unfamiliar, because too loose, she'll start leaking. Too tight, you'll probably break one of these Allens, and you don't want to do that. Alright, throttle body is on. Now we're going to move before we go too far at all. See, I almost did it right there. You got to make sure you plug in the throttle body connector. Very, very important. If you don't, well, just do it. Otherwise you'll find out the hard way. Now we're going to drop this in. We're going to move this hose out of the way. Now ideally you want to start here on the bottom, and then you can pull the whole thing backwards. and 2 hands is absolutely necessary in my opinion. So I'm gonna set the camera down, finish putting this back together. Alright, so we got that tube back on. It's on the throttle body, seated into the boot. That is a 10 mil. This is not though. This is an 8 mil, so I'm gonna tighten this first. Although we got to be on the tight setting. Okay, these do not have to be reamed on, by the way. If you're one of those guys that's like trying to like torque it, no, it's just a clamp. It doesn't need to be insanely tight. This one I'm going to rotate up so it's a little bit easier. Swap sockets here quick. Slowly I'm learning to do this one hand. Alright. Okay, that's all I'm doing. Doesn't need to be any tighter than that. We'll get him a little cap on the AC there. Essentially, it's that simple. Now, one thing I didn't show you in the beginning. Engine cover, okay, 4 10 mil bolts. Not hard. Well, I should say 2 are bolts, 2 are nuts. The nuts go on the front, bolts go on the back. Very simple deal. Right now I got a magnet tray there. I'm gonna be moving all this out of the way because right now we're actually about to move on to front propeller shaft, and we're gonna be doing both upper control arms as well.